Everyone thinks Garp saved the day at God Valley, but the truth, he wasn't even the one who did the saving. While the world was busy praising a Marine for protecting the celestial dragons, someone else was risking their life in the shadows. Someone who was never supposed to survive. That character was a literal slave at the time and ended up doing what no one else could, saving hundreds of lives while legends like Roger and Garp were busy chasing glory. And once you hear what really happened that day, you'll never look at the hero of God Valley the same way again. For years, the God Valley incident has been called the single most important turning point in the history of One Piece. But the version of the story that the world government told, the one that made Monkey D. Garp a hero and pushed Rox D. Xebec into the shadows of forgotten history, is only a fraction of the truth in the real story. It's way messier, way darker, and way more heartbreaking than anyone was prepared for. Garp was celebrated across the world as the man who defeated the Rox pirates and protected the celestial dragons from utter annihilation. But that title, Hero of God Valley, might have been the biggest lie ever broadcast in the name of justice, because the real chaos of that day didn't start with Garp, and it didn't end with him either. 38 years ago, on an island called God Valley, which has literally vanished off every official map, by the way, an event took place that pulled in some of the most powerful forces on the planet all at once. We're talking about the Marines, the Holy Knights, the Roger Pirates, the Rox Pirates, and even a godhead, a celestial entity with terrifying influence and authority. The sheer number of major powers present in one place should have been an instant red flag. But what made all of them converge at the exact same time? Treasure. Celestial dragon treasure, to be specific. And devil fruits, not just any random Zoan either. We're talking elite grade, top-tier devil fruits rumored to be sealed away by the world nobles for centuries. And thanks to one unexpected whistleblower, Ginny, that secret leaked to the world. Suddenly, God Valley wasn't just another island. It became a battleground. The Rox pirates, already hungry for power and chaos, made their move. Big Mom, who was part of the crew at the time, got to the cash first and managed to secure just one prize. The mythical fish fruit model, Azure Dragon, a fruit that would later find its way into Kaido's hands. That alone should tell you how high the stakes were. But strangely enough, Garp didn't even care. He had no plans of going to God Valley at all. That is until he found out that Roger was going. And that changes his mind, ladies and gentlemen. Now here's where things get wild. Garp the Marine hero, the living embodiment of justice and loyalty to the system, only agreed to get involved because Gold D. Roger was there. He wasn't there to protect celestial dragons. He didn't show up out of some moral obligation. He wanted to fight Roger, plain and simple. But what he found instead was a threat even he couldn't face alone. Because standing between them and the survival of God Valley was Rox D. Xebec, a man so dangerous, so ideologically insane, that both Roger and Garp knew they had no choice but to team up. Imagine being that evil that it forces a pirate and a Marine to form a temporary alliance. That's how bad it was. The two legends fought side by side, not as friends, not as allies, but as necessary weapons pointed at a shared enemy. And once the dust settled and the Rox pirates were scattered, that alliance was dissolved like it never happened. Roger was erased from the story, Garp was given the spotlight, and the public was handed a clean, heroic tale to believe in. But that story was missing the most important name of all. Kuma was the real hero, and nobody knew. While Roger and Garp were locking fists with Xebec, something else was happening under the surface, literally. Beneath the chaos, locked in cells like animals, were the victims of the celestial dragon's twisted native hunting competition. Innocent people who were kidnapped, enslaved, and thrown into a deadly game for entertainment. One of them was a boy named Bartholomew Kuma, and his role in the God Valley incident might actually change everything we thought we knew. Kuma was just a kid when it happened, not a pirate, not a fighter, just a prisoner scheduled to be hunted and killed for sport. And yet, somehow, he found the strength to break out of his cell, not just to save himself, but to try to save everyone else trapped with him. That alone would have made him a hero. But the nightmare didn't stop there. The celestial dragons, in their usual cruelty, manipulated the other slaves into believing that Kuma was a threat to their survival. They told them that if they brought Kuma back, they would be spared. And in desperation, they listened. Kuma was beaten down not by guards, but by the very people he was trying to save. But even then, he didn't give up. And that's when two other names entered the scene, Ivankov and Ginny. They knew the truth. Nobody survives the hunting competition. Not a single person. So instead of waiting to die, they made a plan. And that plan was to find the devil fruits. Now this part is crucial. While Big Mom had already taken the fish fruit model, Azure Dragon, Kuma, and Ivankov managed to find another fruit, the pawpaw fruit. That's right. The same power that would one day make Kuma one of the most feared figures in the world came from that single desperate moment. Ivankov was seconds away from eating it himself until Big Mom showed up again, and this time, she was ready to kill. Fearing they'd lose both fruits, Ivankov shoved the pawpaw fruit into Kuma's hands and told him to run. Kuma didn't argue. He ate the fruit, awakened his powers, and what happened next might be one of the greatest feats of heroism in the history of One Piece. He didn't run. He didn't fight for revenge. He used the power of the pawpaw fruit to save over 500 lives, pushing people out of danger, away from the island, one after another, while chaos raged around them. And most of the world will never know. He didn't get a statue. He didn't get a title. He didn't even get a thank you. All he got was erased. And yet without him, God Valley would have ended in absolute genocide. But the wildest part, we're still not done. It's been said that God Valley might not be gone forever. There's been buzz that Imu, the mysterious sovereign at the top of the world government, could have wiped the island from maps using ancient weapons. But if that's true, then someone had to witness it. Someone had to survive. And if Kuma was one of those people, then maybe he knew too much. Maybe that's why he was turned into a weapon. Maybe that's why the world government broke him. Maybe Kuma holds a piece of the final truth, the one secret that could connect Imu, the celestial dragons, and the fall of Roxy Xebec in one horrifying loop. And that might just change everything we thought we knew about the Void Century. However, Ivankov and Ginny told them nobody survived the hunting competition. Despite having the odds stacked against them, Ivankov was hopeful that they could still get off the island. In order to improve their chances of survival, Ivankov knew that they had to find the devil fruits. Kuma decided to give the plan a try and went with Ivankov to secure the devil fruits. After searching for a while, they found the paw fruit and the fish fruit model, Azure Dragon. The latter was taken by Ivankov while Kuma took the Azure Dragon fruit. Just when Ivankov was about to eat the devil fruit, Big Mom stopped him and took it from his hands. Fearing that Big Mom would steal the paw fruity as well, Ivankov told Kuma to run and eat the devil fruit. Kuma obliged and gained the power of the devil fruit. Kuma saved more than 500 people who were also on God Valley. If he hadn't used his newfound strength, they would likely have been killed by the celestial dragons for their pleasure. It's unfortunate that most people within the One Piece world will never learn the truth about Kuma and how he single-handedly saved so many lives. But this is an ultimate question that has bugged fans for so many years. Why did Garp and Roger teamed up and protected the celestial dragons? I think I found the right answer for that truth. So let me explain first. So here's the part nobody ever talks about. The celestial dragons didn't just sit around on golden thrones abusing power from behind the scenes. No, apparently these monsters used to hold something far more sinister. Triannual tournaments of genocide. And not just some fringe ritual hidden away in the dark corners of Mary Joie. These were full-on systematic purges treated like grand events. The Super Bowl of Suffering, where entire populations were chosen as targets just to entertain their twisted sense of dominance. It's sick, but the question that's haunted fans for years still stands. If the celestial dragons were this bad, then why in the world did Garp and Roger protect them? But this is where things start getting complicated. Some fans like to imagine the Rocks pirates as these anti-hero vigilantes trying to destroy the corrupt celestial dragons. But don't get it twisted. They weren't freedom fighters. They were chaos incarnate. And maybe, just maybe, they saw the genocidal games as an opportunity, a loophole to flip the board and slaughter every single one of the celestial dragons while they were all conveniently gathered in one place. It's poetic in a horrifying way, and the predators becoming the prey. But here's the thing. When you send monsters to kill other monsters, you don't end up with peace. You end up with different monsters in charge. And that's where Roger likely drew the line. Roger was no saint, but he had a code. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. If he'd let Rocks win at God Valley, the world wouldn't be saved. It would be reshaped under an even more brutal rule. You'd have Xebec at the top, with Kaido and Big Mom carving out their own kingdoms beneath him. A new world order forged in blood. Yeah, the celestial dragons are awful. We all know that. But in Roger's eyes, a world ruled by the Rocks pirates would have been an eternal hell. So he didn't step in because he loved the Celestials. He stepped in because sometimes the lesser evil is still better than the apocalypse. But that's not the only reason. Here's the emotional core of it all and the children. Imagine you're Roger. You step onto the island, blades still dripping with the madness of battle, and in the distance, you hear the cries of a child. Not a soldier, not a celestial tyrant, a child. Maybe dozens of them, maybe hundreds. And in that moment, he wasn't looking at nobles. He was seeing innocence. Lives born into evil, but not by choice. And we know this affected him because years later, Roger would literally beg Garp to protect Ace, the child of a man he once fought to the death. Because to Roger, no child deserved to suffer for their father's sins. That was the line he couldn't cross. And that's probably the moment the God Valley incident stopped being about politics and became personal. And here's the wildest theory, one that fans have quietly whispered for years. What if Shanks wasn't just a random stowaway? What if he was hidden away by Whitebeard himself? It sounds insane, but it lines up. Among the monsters of the Rock's crew, Whitebeard stood out. Even back then, he probably still valued something deeper than power: family. The same man who'd later call every crew member his son, and who would literally die protecting them, might have looked at the chaos on God Valley and thought, nope. And when he saw a child, maybe a noble's child, maybe something more mysterious, he made the call: hide him, save him, stuff him in a treasure chest if that's the only way. And who found that chest? Roger. But the real twist is what that moment did to Whitebeard. Whitebeard never seemed to like Shanks. Not outright hate, just tension. And it makes you wonder, what if Shanks reminded him of the day he saw the worst of mankind? The blood, the betrayal, maybe even his failure to protect others? And then there's the other layer, the scar. There's been talk that it came from Figureland Garling, Shanks' supposed father and a warrior with a brutal streak. And if that's true, then the irony is unbearable. Whitebeard might have been scarred by the same bloodline that gave Shanks life. A child he helped protect, a wound he couldn't forget. Now that's some poetic torment, huh? But even all of that still might not be the full truth.